In 1990, Vietnam was one of the poorest countries on earth. Their GDP per capita was $121. $121. Nigeria in 1990 had a higher income per person than Vietnam. Today, Nigerians' GDP per capita is $1,222. Vietnam has quadrupled our GDP per capita. Nigeria is the largest oil producer in Africa. Nigeria sits on some of the largest natural gas reserves on earth. And Nigerian manufacturers pay four times for electricity than their global competitors. The last figure from a CBN report cited in 2016 by Chief Audu showed Nigerians spent $18 million importing toothpicks from China. Tell me why Nord Automobile in Lagos can't dominate Africa and supply cars to the world, or Innocent in Anambra. Welcome to Ninja Vibes, the masked voice of Nigerians' welfare and security. Here, we analyze the issues that shape our nation, from the streets to the system. We uncover the truths, share solutions, and highlight best practices from across the world. No faces, no bias, not politically inclined to any party or individual, no ethnic coloration, and no religious undertone. Just facts, insights, and the drive to make Nigeria better. Ninja Vibes. Real talk, real solutions for every Nigerian. Hello, my people. Welcome. In 1990, Vietnam was one of the poorest countries on earth. Their GDP per capita was $121. $121. A country just emerging from war and famine. Millions of people with nothing. Today, Vietnam's GDP per capita is $4,829. They make Samsung phones, Nike shoes, Intel chips, Apple components. Their manufacturing sector grew by nearly 9% in 2025 alone. Nigeria in 1990 had a higher income per person than Vietnam. Today, Nigerians' GDP per capita is $1,222. Vietnam has quadrupled our GDP per capita from a country that was poorer than us. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to sit with it for the next 15 minutes. What exactly has Nigeria been doing for the last 36 years? Let us begin with the numbers. The Nigerian government will tell you the unemployment rate is 4.3%. They will show you graphs. They will quote the MBS. They are not lying about the number, but in my opinion, there is more to it. Here's what happened in 2021. The MBS changed how it defines unemployment. Under the old method, Nigerians' unemployment rate in 2020 was 33.3%. Under the new method, measuring the same period, it would be approximately 4%. Same Nigeria, same people, same suffering, different counting method. The honest measurement, combining the unemployed with those who are severely underemployed, working less than 20 hours a week, unable to find a full-time work, gives you 13.5% of the labor force. That is approximately about 16 million people, and 12.5% of Nigerian youths between 15 and 24 are not in employment, not in education, and not in any form of training whatsoever. They are simply waiting. That is the needs rate, not in education, employment, or training. Millions of young Nigerians, fully formed human beings, simply idle. But here is what most people miss in this conversation. 85.6% of all employed Nigerians are self-employed. 93% are in the informal economy. Think about what that means. Most Nigerians who are working did not find a job. They created their own. The woman selling food by the road, the mechanic under the tree, the tailor in the market. These are not people who gave up. These are Nigerians who refused to wait. So the unemployment crisis in Nigeria is not simply a story of lazy citizens and a bad government. It is the story of a nation full of people working ferociously hard and a system that makes it structurally impossible for any of that work to grow into something bigger. That is the real wound. Not that Nigerians are not trying, but they are. Every time they try to scale up, to buy a machine, to hire one more person, to build a real business, the system kills it. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how that happens and exactly what has to change. The root cause number one, and this is the one nobody wants to say out loud because it is embarrassing. Nigeria is the largest oil producer in Africa. Nigeria sits on some of the largest natural gas reserves on earth. And Nigerian manufacturers pay 4 times for electricity than their global competitors. 4 times. Because the national grid is so unreliable, operating at only 31% of its stated capacity according to PwC, that almost every serious business in Nigeria runs its own diesel generator. And a diesel generator in Nigeria costs approximately 44 US cents per kilowatt hour to run. The grid, when it works, costs approximately 9 cents. But the grid does not work. So every Nigerian manufacturer is paying 5 times what a Chinese factory pays for power every single day before they buy a single raw material, before they pay a single worker. The lights go out, the generator comes on, and 40% of their production cost disappears into diesel smoke. You want to know why a Nigerian toothpick factory cannot compete with a Chinese toothpick factory? It has nothing to do with laziness. It has nothing to do with intelligence. It is 44 cents versus 8 cents per kilowatt hour. That is it. That is the entire competitive gap in one number. Fuel expenses for generators in Nigeria are estimated at 22 billion US dollars annually. 22 billion US dollars burned every year by businesses and homes desperately trying to compensate for a grid that does not work. That is money that should be wages, that should be machines, that should be expansion. Instead, it is diesel smoke. Root cause number 2. Let us say you survive the power problem. You installed solar panels. You bought a battery bank. You built your small production line. You're making a product. Candles, soap, biscuits, fabric. and then a container arrives at Apapa port from China, full of the same product you're making at a price you cannot match. Nigerians spent 54.4 billion US dollars on import in 2025. China alone supplied 34.4% of that, which is over 12 billion US dollars of goods. And many of these are not luxury items. They are not computers or aeroplanes. These are basic everyday products that Nigeria has every resource on earth to produce. The last figure from a CBN report cited in 2016 by Chief Audu Ogbe showed Nigerians spent $18 million importing toothpicks from China. I guess there are no more trees in Nigeria. Nigeria imports tomato paste. We are the second largest producer of tomato in Africa. We grow the tomato, we sell it, someone processes it, it's somewhere else, we buy it back in a tin. In the 1980s, Nigeria had over 170 textile mills employing between 500,000 and 1 million Nigerians. Currently, only about 5 textile mills are operational. Less than 20,000 workers. And Nigeria now spends $6 billion a year importing fabric. Now imagine we never abandoned this industry. Imagine if those 170 mills had expanded instead of collapsing. Today, we wouldn't be talking about 5 struggling factories. We would be talking about 300 thriving mills supplying Africa and exporting to the world. Imagine the jobs, not 20,000, but over 700,000 direct jobs and over 2 million indirect jobs across cotton farming, ginning, spinning, weaving, dyeing, fashion logistics, and retail. Imagine the billions of dollars we would have saved and the billions we could have earned instead of importing 6 billion worth of fabric every single year. Imagine the cities that would be booming today: Kano, Kaduna, Funtua, Gusau, Aba, all powered by textile manufacturing, just like Bangladesh, Vietnam, and Turkey. Imagine how many young Nigerians would have stable work, skills, and income instead of unemployment and frustration. Every one of these, or let's say those containers coming from China, is not just a product. It is Nigerian job that will never exist. It is Nigerian factory that will never be built. It is Nigerian entrepreneur who tried to scale and could not because the import was cheaper. And this is where I want to be careful, because I'm not saying close the borders. I'm not saying ban all imports. I'm saying Nigeria must make a decision about which industries it wants to protect and build. Because every country that has never, ever, every country that's ever industrialized has made that decision deliberately, not accidentally, not by leaving everything to the market, deliberately. Now, Here is the part of the analysis that most commentators skip because it is uncomfortable. Nigeria has actually tried import substitution before. In the 1970s and 1980s, under military governments, Nigerian protected domestic industries with tariffs and bans. We banned imports of cement, of rice, of sugar, of textiles. And what happened? Protected industries became lazy. Local cement was expensive and inferior. Local rice was more expensive than imported rice, even with tariff. And corruption turned every import ban into a struggling opportunity for those connected to power. So if you have watched other videos or read other commentaries saying simply ban the import and watch Nigerian thrive, I am here to tell you that the history says it is more complicated than that. The difference between what failed in 1980s and what could work today is not the idea. Import substitution as a concept is correct. Every industrialized nation used it. The difference is three things: enforcement without corruption, competitive pressure instead of pure protection, and solving electricity first. You can ban every Chinese toothpicks that enters Nigeria, but if the Nigerian toothpick factory is paying 44 cents per kilowatt hour to run its machines, the locally made toothpick will still be more expensive than the smuggled Chinese one. You cannot fix the production problem without first fixing the power problem. Anyone who tells you otherwise is selling you a comfortable answer, not a correct one. Here is the Nigerian Ninja Vibes verdict. Nigerian unemployment crisis is not a mystery. It is not the result of Nigerians being less capable, less intelligent, or less hardworking than anyone else on earth. The evidence says the exact opposite. 93% of working Nigerians built their own income without waiting for anyone. That is not the behavior of a lazy people. That is the behavior of an extraordinary, resilient people operating inside a broken system. A system is broken in three specific, measurable, fixable ways. First, electricity. The most fundamental input to any production economy costs 4 times more than in Nigeria than it should. I repeat, the most fundamental input to any production economy costs 4 times more in Nigeria than it should. The second, imports flood the market before local production can build scale. The third, every attempt to fix these two things has failed, not because the ideas were wrong, but because the implementation collapsed under corruption and the absence of political will. Nigerians' unemployment crisis is not a resource problem. It's not an intelligence problem. It is not even simply a policy problem. It is a sequencing problem. You cannot build factories if you cannot power them. You cannot protect local industries if the people protecting them are on the payroll of the importers. And you cannot solve unemployment until you are honest about those two facts. The question Nigeria has never seriously answered is not what should we produce. The question is, in what order do we fix the things that make production impossible? And that is exactly what I'm going to tell you right now. Before I give you the solutions, I need to say this. I am going to give them to you in a specific order because the order matters as much as the solution themselves. You cannot implement solution 4 without implementing solution 1. This is the sequencing Nigeria has never got right. Step 1. And this is non-negotiable. Nothing else on this list works without it. Nigeria must declare industrial electricity a national emergency. Not grid power for everyone immediately. That is a 20-year project, but guaranteed stable, affordable power for manufacturing zones within 3 years. That model that works. Dedicated industrial power zones, each with its own captive power supply. Solar gas hybrid mini grids, ring-fenced from the national grid's chronic instability. Every manufacturing business inside these zones gets power at a guaranteed rate. The rate must be competitive with what Chinese and Vietnamese factories pay, which is approximately 8 to 10 US cents per kilowatt hour. Ghana has done this with its industrial zones in Accra. Ethiopia built the Awasa Industrial Park specifically with captive power. Samsung did not move to Vietnam because Vietnamese workers are better than Nigerians workers. No, Samsung moved because the lights stay on in Vietnam. Fix the power, everything downstream becomes possible. Step 2. Once power zones exist, and only then introduce targeted import substitution, not a blanket import ban. Nigeria tried that, it failed. A sequenced sector-specific approach. Identify 20 products that Nigerian can realistically manufacture competitively once power is stable. Toothpicks, matches, razor, blades, tomato paste, basic textiles, ceramic tiles, processed fish, etc. For each one, published a 5-year local production roadmap. Year 1, no tariff change. Local producers build capacity. Year 2, tariff on import rises by 20%. Year 3, rises further, and the same for year 4. By year 5, imports are priced out if the local production has achieved scale. If local production fails to achieve scale, then the tariff comes back down. This is not protection for its own sake. It is a temporary competitive window enforced with measurable milestones. And critically, every tariff revenue collected goes directly into the Bank of Industry. Reinforced for manufacturing loans at single-digit interest rate. The protection funds its own solution. What step are we now? Step 3, yeah, you are following. The Nigerian government is the largest single buyer of goods and services in Nigeria. It buys vehicles, furniture, uniforms, stationery, food, tiles, cement. Right now, most of that purchasing goes into importers or foreign-owned suppliers. Countries that dominate car manufacturing today all used one rule: buy local first. Indian did it. Now, Maruti Suzuki owns 41% of the market. Vietnam did it. VinFast exploded to 29% market share in just few years. The Czech Republic did it. Skoda controls over a third of all the car sales. This industry didn't grow by accident. Their government created demand and the factories followed. Tell me why Nord Automobile in Lagos can't dominate Africa and supply cars to the world, or Innocent in Anambra. We have to create the local demand first, not forever, for a minimum of 7 years, long enough for local industries to achieve the scale that makes them genuinely competitive. Government procurement must prioritize Nigerian-made vehicles, furniture, uniform, cement, everything we already produce. The government doesn't need to build the factories. It just needs to be the first customer. History shows that alone is enough to create hundreds of thousands of jobs. We started with Vietnam, a country that in 1990 had $121 per person. That was poorer than Nigeria by every measure. That had just survived a devastating war, and that made a decision. We will make things. We will fix the power first. We will protect industries long enough for them to compete. We will be the first customer to what our people produce. And today, Samsung assembles phones in Vietnam. Nike makes its shoes in Vietnam. Apple puts Vietnamese components in your iPhone. Nigeria made a different decision. We sell oil. We buy everything else. And then we hold meetings about why there are no jobs. The difference between Vietnam and Nigeria is not geography. It is not culture. It is not intelligence or work ethic. If anything, the opposite argument is easier to make. The difference is sequencing. The difference is political will. The difference is whether the people making the decisions are willing to make enemies of the importers and the forex speculators who profit from keeping Nigeria a consumption economy. The solution to Nigerians' unemployment is not complicated. It is not rocket science. But it requires something more difficult than intelligence. It requires courage. So, Vietnam fixed its power, protected its industries, and made government the first customer for local goods. That is not theory. It is history. Nigerians' only question is whether it chooses to repeat it. If this analysis gave you clarity, subscribe to this channel, like the video, and share until it reaches the eyes and ears of our leaders and every Nigerian. Together, we make the change. Ninja Ninja Vibes. Real talk, real solutions for every Nigerian. See you in the next one. One love.